Welcome, educators. This is the Educator's Guide to Emotional and Behavioral Challenges.
Hi, I'm Vinny Searcy, and I'm a clinical educator. I've worked in both suburban and urban schools for over 15 years as a school adjustment counselor, school psychologist, and special education administrator. The other easy kinds of interventions you can use whenever possible is to allow some choices that helps the child feel more in control. If you know, for example, they're going to do a writing assignment and then highlight a passage, you can simply say, you're going to highlight the passage and you're going to do the writing assignment. You choose which one you get done first and then move on to the next one. It doesn't take a lot of time. It doesn't take a lot of disruption to your classroom, but it does help.
Timid, shy, anxious, keyed up, touchy students often will feel much more comfortable around a student that they know from experience or have been told is especially tolerant and helpful. It's not necessary to assign this student as a junior therapist or to put the student in a position of responsibility over his peer. It's just that some selective attention to how kids are matched up with each other can be very important as a part of your strategy.
Competition is a big part of education, and some of our students do really well with it. Other students, not so much. Try to de-emphasize competition when working with the anxious student. This isn't helpful to their progress, and it can impede their very thought process as they move forward trying to accomplish whatever it is you've assigned them. Why is competition not good for the anxious student? Well, they tend to compare themselves anyways, and when they do, they tend to do it in a way that is unfavorable. They see themselves as not worthy or not competitive with their peers. And so by setting up a competitive situation, you automatically almost shut them down.
Anxious students often appear fatigued, listless, lacking energy. The Positive Behavioral Support Plan should address some of these common symptoms of anxiety as well. Here's where breathing, stretching, progressive muscle relaxation, and motor breaks in general can be very helpful, and relaxation can benefit everyone. In its simplest form, deep breathing can be, for the older student, a counting exercise. At first, one breath in is a count and one breath out is a count. Next, it's one breath in and then exhale to a count of 4. Inhale deeply and exhale to a count of 8, and so on. And many people can breathe deeply and exhale to a count of 60. This act of filling the lungs, stretching the diaphragm, and clearing the mind with a suggestion, counting, is a potent signal from the cortex of the brain, the thinking part, to the irrational survival mechanisms in the limbic system. Because animals who are in danger simply do not breathe this way, the irrational survival mechanisms can be slowly reset.
And I think that maybe if other nervous kids, if they had a pinwheel or they had a solution to make everything that they felt nervous about better, then school wouldn't be stressful at all. It would be a lot more fun for all the kids in my school.
The most supportive interventions for an anxious student are going to occur when he or she is not especially upset. These include some discussions about helping the student recognize and put words to his or her moods, feelings, and behaviors. An educator at the whiteboard can easily do a brainstorming session with students to identify some of their automatic negative thoughts in a column to the left, for instance, and reframe them as their positive, logical counter thoughts on the right side. Because in fact, when they're automatic, generally people don't challenge their negative thoughts with any evidence. Since anxious students often have trouble following through on assignments, staying focused, completing tasks, and generally keeping their mind where it belongs, they can benefit quite a bit from some extra accommodations and support with organization. Depending on the age of the student, this might involve an AM and PM check-in, could involve printed notes, tape-recorded lectures, videotaped lectures, email assignments to mother or father. Every positive behavioral support plan for an anxious student must include some sort of strategy to deal with physical complaints.
Like when I talk about tests, it's like, it makes me feel like sick, like kind of like right now I'm kind of getting like a headache or something, and it's really annoying. Like it feels like I'm gonna be sick. I don't like it.
Students with anxiety are often frequent flyers to the school nurse. They tend to have headaches and stomach aches, and the educator, not being a medical professional, has a difficult time interpreting what should be taken seriously, what should be taken as an emergency, and what should be considered a routine part of the experience of anxiety. Here's where some guidance from the school nurse and the student's pediatrician can be very useful. I recommend that specific written parameters, especially for what constitutes a medical problem that would necessitate going home early. I think this should be documented in a written form and make sure that everyone understands it. Bear in mind that physical symptoms used in the service or for the function of avoidance may not be conscious. In other words, your anxious student isn't thinking, I don't like to do math, so I'm going to say I have a stomach ache and then get sent home. The process is usually much more unconscious than that. But the frequency and intensity of stomach aches will increase if they serve the purpose of getting the student away from an activity that causes him distress. If you're convinced that the medical complaints have been worked up to the satisfaction of the parents and the pediatrician, then operate off of your guidelines. Usually, it's a rule of thumb that vomiting or complaints of stomach distress should not be sufficient to go home early from school. Otherwise, they'll increase in frequency. Fevers are very difficult to feign, and anxiety tends not to produce a high core body temperature.
Help them identify some other go-to people within your building, whether it's an administrator, school adjustment counselor, maybe it's the custodian. Whoever it is that they can go to and talk to when you're either not there or wrapped up in other very important business that you do.
I'm always worried, and I have these little worry dolls that don't make me worried anymore for some reason, and I really like them. But I can't use them in school because toys aren't allowed. So it makes it even worse because I'm always worried in school because I don't have them.
Although it may feel counterintuitive, allow your students to have some kind of object that helps them relax or reduce their stress. Don't be concerned, as I know many of you would be, that that item will become a toy or a plaything. You can manage that through some simple behavioral interventions. If it's being abused, then it needs to be put away for a while. But recognize that this is an easy and non-intrusive method to managing the student's anxiety during a difficult time.
A teacher said, "You know you're not allowed to have toys here," and I said, "But will you let me explain?" She wouldn't let me explain, so I couldn't tell her that it was to get away with my worries. And now I don't really like to talk to her because she won't let me explain anything. And so whenever she calls on me, I kind of just sit there and pretend like I don't know the answer.